strange new era is dawning. An era of revolutionary experiments. Wired torsos, chip-implanted brains, creatures of silicon and steel. Welcome to the age of cyborgs and androids. As humans become more machine-like and machines more human, the line between biology and technology is starting to blur. And in the process, we may just be reinventing the future of our species. In this age of advancing technology, we are becoming increasingly impatient with the bodies nature has given us. With our frailties, our failing sight, our broken limbs, the crippling limitations of illness and age. While our minds soar, our bodies seem frozen in time. What if we could build a better body? Use technology to fix this human form, and then actually improve upon it. Make it stronger, faster, smarter, and create the human of the future today. Futurists have long speculated that we could use our technology to alter the course of human evolution, to redesign the species. 4 decades ago, the neuroscientist Manfred Clynes imagined engineering a new race of people for life in space. Their bodies rewired, their hearts replaced by nuclear fuel cells. Metal beneath the skin. He called them cybernetic organisms, cyborgs, the ultimate merger of man and machine. In the past decade, medical science has already fit some 11 million people worldwide with artificial body parts. Titanium hearts, synthetic corneas, mechanical hands and legs. Now, a new generation of implants is on the horizon. As computer chips become tinier, more powerful, engineers are fitting them with biological sensors, electrodes, radio receivers, devices that tap directly into the senses and reach deep into the brain itself. The next wave of computer devices, now on the drawing board, pushes miniaturization to the limits. Strange new machines with circuits and wires down to the size of atoms, and powers we could not have imagined a generation ago. They'll transform medicine and extend our capabilities in remarkable new ways.
We are at a critical juncture in the relationship between technology and ourselves, in that technology is really beginning to achieve the potency that it can radically transform notions of who we are. A major realm where that is occurring is in medicine, because the forces that have so radically transformed the world around us are now coming back, and they're going to change us as well. And the question is, what will that interface be between us and the technologies that we have created. How tight will it be? Will it be a matter of our wearing very sophisticated technologies with, that are intelligent, that interact with us in powerful ways, or will we actually begin to merge with them in some way?
Glimmers of this merger are beginning to appear in a series of astonishing real-world applications, like the one that helps Jen Penko. She and her fiancé, Tim French, had made a home in western New Hampshire. Skiing, sailing, hiking, they lived in the great outdoors. And then one winter day, they went snowboarding.
It was a ski weekend up in New England. A bunch of us would go up each year skiing, and we were all together making a run down the mountain, and we got to the bottom of the mountain, and Jennifer wasn't there. So we waited for a while at the bottom of the mountain, looking around for her. Didn't see her. It was strange. She's usually right with us. So we headed back up the mountain looking for her.
I had hit a patch of ice and went down a 30 or 40-foot embankment, kissed a bunch of trees, and ended up face down in the snow.
It was terrifying to see her laying there in the snow and injured. When they started asking if she could feel this or move this, and she couldn't, you know, move her legs and stuff, it was tough.
I was pulled aside by doctors and said, "You will never work again, you will never recreate again, you will never walk again, and you had better get used to it." So it was a pretty big slap in the face. To that, I said, well, that ain't gonna happen.
Jennifer's spine was severed. She was paralyzed. All movement from her chest down was lost. Doctors told her, once you get a spinal cord injury this severe, you never leave the wheelchair again. The couple moved to Cleveland to be near a lab affiliated with Case Western Reserve University, where researchers are working with spinal injury victims. Jen signed up for an experimental procedure and hoped for the best.
Hi. What are you working on?
Surgeons placed a small computer in her abdomen, and from there wired a series of electrodes into her back and legs. The goal, to spark motion in her muscles. Jen took the system home and went to work. She had no idea if her legs would ever move again. But now she had a chance. The push of a button on a wireless external device sends the electrical signal to her muscles, which causes them to contract. She began to harness those contractions and translate them into movement. The more she practiced, gaining back her strength, the more she realized what she could do. Then one day, Jen found herself on the brink of fulfilling a dream. To stand again.
First time I stood up was the most liberating experience of my life. You know, many people say that you're consolidated to a wheelchair or you're stuck in a wheelchair, and to be able to stand gives you a whole new freedom. It's just incredible.
There are many benefits to this system besides standing. Maintaining muscle tone, blood circulation, keeping her legs from atrophy. The movement is mechanically induced, but it's all Jen.
because this whole system is intact and it's underneath the skin, you in essence forget about it. You know that it's there, but it just becomes a part of you. I can canoe, I can work, I can drive, I can go out shopping and do my laundry just like every other normal human being.
Now Jen has turned to a new goal, a goal almost unthinkable after her accident. In just a few months, she hopes to be mobile enough for a very special day.
We're gonna go over to Uncle Tim.
My expectation for my wedding is to be able to, walk up the aisle and be able to stand for the entire ceremony and walk back down. That's why I practice every day. That's why I'm working on endurance. I mean, that's my short-term goal.
That's right. So go slow.
For millions of people with physical disabilities, Jen's case holds the promise of radical new possibilities, a new hope, as medical science begins to forge connections between computers and bodies, between human tissue and electronic devices.
The dividing line between biology and non-biology is blurring. And so the biological manipulations that we are beginning to do or to contemplate are very much technological changes. So we are beginning to bring technological processes to bear upon ourselves with a substrate of biology. And at the same time, the technology that we see as hard technology, computer chips and stuff, is beginning to achieve a complexity and a richness in function that makes it almost biological, almost lifelike. And so the sharp line between biology and non-biology is really fading.
It was the ancient Chinese who first discovered that the body actually runs on electricity. Over the centuries, scientists speculated that we could tap into that electrical system to restore lost functions and actually repair the body like a machine. It took modern electronics to show us how. Electrical current flows through our nerve cells, the neurons, carrying instructions and information. That same current can flow to and from the cells into man-made devices, allowing them to communicate and interact, setting the stage for some remarkable developments. Researchers at the House Ear Institute and St. Vincent's Hospital in Los Angeles are now wiring electronic devices directly into the brain. Their aim? To restore lost hearing. They are working with patients with tumors that have destroyed the nerve leading from the inner ear.
To make it back a bit. Give us malfunction.
Dr. William Hitzelberger is the head surgeon.
Here's the tumor that we're going to take out like that.
Because the surgeons must carve into the deepest reaches of the brain, they have an extraordinary opportunity. Often, invasive brain surgery results in some amount of damage to the brain. But today, that's about to change.
The usual neurosurgical procedure can entail loss of function. It's unusual for our procedures to give something back to a patient. In this situation, this patient has been deaf. So we're going to restore her hearing, which is, to me, it's very rewarding to do that.
Once the tumors have been removed, Dr. Hitzelberger and colleagues will expose a tiny center at the base of the brain that processes sounds. They place a strip of electrodes onto the hearing center, which will connect wirelessly to a tiny external microphone. The team now boasts over 100 success stories.
Alaska or someplace like that? Or sit over there.
Marie Drew, a 57-year-old grandmother, is one of them.
Have you had any problems at all, any side effects with the implant?
No. Like I said,
Marie's
all
tumors
I got
destroyed the
is
nerves that
a
controlled her
little bit of
hearing
sensation here
and the
in
muscles in her
front, and that's
face.
really something you get used to.
But she is
It's not
determined to live her
painful or
life.
anything like that. So
And her
I
newly
don't
implanted
know.
sound gathering system is having a big impact.
This is a magnetic tape. The patients can feel where the antenna is under the skin. And they can
With the
just put
system
that
in
over the
place,
magnet.
she's starting to hear again for the first time in years.
You know, I can hear my telephone ring. I can hear it deep when it's off the hook. I can hear my microwave deep. I can hear a horn when I'm driving. Those things give me independence. Baby crying.
Great. This is the first sign, really, that the device helps them, I think. The first objective sign is that they can understand a lot, recognize a lot of these sounds. So it's exciting for them, and it's really exciting for me, too, to know that their implant really is working for them.
The dog barking.
Some patients with this implant hear well enough to talk on the telephone.
Vacuum cleaner.
6 months after her operation, Marie still can't hear all the subtleties of language.
10.
3.
10.
But that's starting to improve.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
Most important, Marie can now hear her granddaughter's voice.
Next time, you have to get them all right.
Oh, I don't want to be known as the deaf old lady that sits in the
do
corner
some
and never
testing
knows what's going on. I used to whitewater raft and downhill ski and parasail, you know, and that's the kind of image I wanted my grandchildren to have of me, that we could share those things.
3.
These early successes have paved the way for another groundbreaking project, one that could help millions more.
5.
5.
Researchers at the University of Illinois, Chicago, are now attempting to perform an act once confined to the Bible: restoring sight to the blind. They've built a tiny chip that can be inserted directly into the retina, at the back of the eye. It is designed to convert light to electricity, stimulating the retina and giving patients the first glimmers of sight. The ability to make out patterns of light and dark. Another team, based at Johns Hopkins University, is hoping to produce an even clearer image. With a complete artificial vision system, millions suffer from damaged retinas. Yet their optic nerve, connecting eyes and brain, is in perfect order. Their vision degenerates when cells at the back of the retina die off. An array of electrodes is tacked directly onto living cells at the front of the retina. It connects to a tiny computer chip, which receives signals wirelessly from an external camera mounted discreetly on a pair of glasses. The result? A modern-day miracle. Manufactured vision. This is a simulation of what doctors expect patients to see. Images recorded on hundreds of tiny squares, called pixels, then patched into the brain. The electrodes will not deliver the subtleties of a fully functioning eye, but they can restore useful vision and a new sense of connection to the world. This is the promise of a new bionic age. Senses once lost can be recovered. What you thought was gone forever can now be restored. Today's high-tech implants are just beginning to help the first wave of patients by sending electrical impulses into their nervous systems. What if you could go one step further? To receive impulses coming out of the body, to read thoughts and intentions coming from the brain itself. Igor Feynman is a neurosurgeon who works with patients who have lost the ability to move, who are trapped inside their bodies. Just a week ago, Leon Bostic, a first-year law student, suffered a spinal injury while lifting weights. He's left with a little movement in his arms and not much else.
Let me just see how your strength and everything is today. Okay.
Doctors are assembling an array of tools that may one day help patients like him, from nerve tissue regeneration to voice-activated computers.
Good. That's good strength there. Good. Do you feel much there?
But what can be done for those who are even worse off, unable to speak, move, or interact in any way with those around them?
When you feel something sharp and when it
For
gets
them,
duller, if it does.
Dr. Feynman is working on a far-reaching technology, one that can bypass the body altogether and free the mind to communicate on its own.
What we're trying to do is actually decode the brain signals, which would let us know what the intention of the individual is when they're creating those thoughts. One of the first things that we'll be able to do is letting somebody who's completely locked in, say, get on the web and use a cursor on the web, and just by their thoughts move the cursor on the web and surf the internet or something like that.
The centerpiece of this revolutionary new project is a brain implant that will actually read out a person's thoughts directly into a computer. The project is headed by Dr. Richard Anderson, a neuroscientist from the California Institute of Technology. Anderson discovered a special region of the brain where movements are thought up and planned in the split second before the body carries them out. It's called the parietal reach region. Using brain imaging systems, Dr. Anderson and colleagues have shown that this part of the brain still functions even in those who are completely paralyzed. Working with a team from NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, Anderson is designing a computer chip that can be placed into this region.
With our colleagues at JPL, we're working on a chip that can be implanted in the brain and would, in a sense, be a bit like a cell phone in that it would have a capacity to send signals out wirelessly to be picked up by a computer, and then those signals interpreted.
The chip has a series of electrodes that plug right into the brain tissue and pick up impulses given off by brain cells. It will relay those impulses to an external computer. It's the ultimate remote control. Users will merely think about an action, and it will happen. They'll imagine reaching, and their neurons will send the command to a robotic arm or a cursor on a computer screen.
The prosthetic would read out the intent of the subject, and then we would use our understanding of how the information is being coded or represented in that area to determine in a computer what the subject's intention is, and then use that signal to then operate an external device like a robot limb or perhaps to surf the internet.
In short, the implant will allow the mind to act directly on the physical world around it. A kind of high-tech telekinesis, connecting the flow of electricity in the brain to the world of computers and man-made devices. How far can connections like these go? How deeply into the realms of thought can electronic devices function? Steve Potter is a neuroscientist who is probing this amazing frontier. He is using state-of-the-art microscopes and computers to learn the language of neurons, to find out how groups of brain cells communicate.
One of the problems with interfacing external computers to brains or neural tissue is that we don't have a clear understanding even of what the language that's spoken inside the neural tissue is. So a big problem that we have to overcome is just figuring out the very basics of how information is processed and how it propagates through neural tissue.
Neurons make connections with each other by sending out tentacles called axons. They fire electrical charges from one to another. This is communication at the most basic level. As a brain sends and receives information, thousands, even millions of neurons fire together in complex patterns. Potter is attempting to decipher these patterns by wiring a computer to a brain. A test tube brain, a simple blob of neural tissue. Potter puts these cells in a nourishing solution. They can now stay alive, firing away, for a year or more while Potter studies them. His team places the cells into a chip that will read their electrical impulses, allowing them to communicate back and forth to a computer. As the cells fire, the computer records the patterns and uses them to guide a virtual creature whose movements are simulated and displayed on a screen. One firing pattern tells the creature to turn left, another to go right. When an obstacle appears, the computer sends an impulse that alerts the cells. The cells learn the direction sent by the computer and, in time, avoid the obstacles on their own.
In the course of our work, we think it's very important to connect this culture of brain cells to a body, an external entity that can express behavior. Right now it's simulated on a computer, but it's a body and it can behave and it can interact with the environment and learn something. So by studying this system where we can see every single cell, we can conceivably figure out how the cellular mechanisms of learning work. How is it that the cells change shape and make connections as this thing learns something?
This kind of learning takes place naturally in our bodies. We can move without conscious thought because our muscles and nerves learn the firing patterns needed to carry out the action. Potter believes that one day our brains could even learn to control electronic devices with all the naturalness of walking. Implant a chip and automatically drive your car, send an electronic message, turn on the microwave. In the coming years, we may well choose from a line of inserts placed painlessly into our brains that give us a host of amazing new capabilities. Imagine plugging into new experiences, vast reams of data, an entire library right inside your head. This is the real cyborg revolution, a brand new landscape of the mind. It could transform us. It could overwhelm us. Science fiction has returned again and again to this merger of man and machine, with fascination and fear. The cyborg, metallically altered, with mechanisms inside the flesh. No wonder the idea of a chip in the brain can make your skin crawl.
What about the whole business of causing cancer? Huh? What about the possibility of an immune reaction? I'm not going to stick one of these things in my head until 1 million other people have. I mean, the same thing with laser eye surgery, for heaven's sake. Now it's being done on street corners. You know, I'm not going to stick my eye under a laser beam until 1 million other people have done it.
As we enter a period when we can, in very meaningful ways, manipulate our biology, either genetically or technologically or pharmacologically, there is going to be a significant conflict, because many people will see this as the invasion of the inhuman, that we're sort of destroying all of the values and things that we hold so dear.
But believe it or not, chip implants for the general public are not that far off. One day soon, your body may have its own staff of built-in doctors, performing constant checkups to make sure you stay healthy.
The most likely initial wave of such devices will be devices that monitor us in one way or another. Just something that is monitoring our heartbeat all the time, that is detecting arrhythmias and dialing the hospital immediately, hooked up with a GPS device that knows where we are at every instant. These kinds of things will really change our sense of the way we live, and it will change our ideas about risk. I can imagine a point where people will feel very vulnerable if they aren't monitored in that way, if their whereabouts is not known at all times.
Putting chips inside your body that are stationary has been done already for many years, like pacemakers. You can imagine surgically implanted hearing aids. There already are such things. Putting something under your skin that regulates your insulin. So as the capability of these chips that you could put in improves, the possibilities explode. With technology like MEMS, where you put little micro machines, miniaturized versions of what have traditionally been very, very large machines in the chips, so they can sense their environment and control fluids. Amazing things become possible.
And the more the technology shrinks, the more amazing the possibilities are. Imagine a time in the not-too-distant future. A young woman is pulled from a burning car. Carbon dioxide from the smoke has shut her breathing down. Luckily, the rescue squad has a secret weapon. It's not medicine, but a solution of miniature medical robots. Millions of tiny computerized devices, almost too small to be detected. They make their way through the arteries into the smallest of blood vessels on a fantastic voyage to cure from within. This is a device called a respirosite. Its mission, to release oxygen molecules into the blood and sop up the carbon dioxide, allowing the body to breathe freely once again. One day, such tiny robots may be the vanguard of an army of miniature medical warriors that seek out disease cells and kill them one by one. This incredible shrinking universe is being invented right now by a handful of scientists working at the limits of microengineering. At the forefront is Mark Reed from Yale University. He is designing a whole new kind of computer chip that may transform technology and our bodies along the way.
So this is a microprocessor. This is the heart of a computer today. About a 1-inch square sliver of silicon with on the order of 1 million transistors are all put onto this surface. The new technology that we have on being able to do nanoscale and molecular size systems is to be able to make the devices so small that we can pack 1 million devices on this and have the millions of times more computer power in the same amount of area.
1 million times smaller, 1 million times more powerful. It's a computer based not on wire circuits, but molecules, not on mechanical switches, but chemical reactions. They're building it right now in Reed's lab. In fact, it actually builds itself in a process called self-assembly. It's the easy bake method of computer design. Just throw together some chemicals and let them do the work. Reed's team starts by placing a special compound into a beaker and mixing it up. No expensive factory, no assembly line, just a few billion molecules acting naturally.
I think what we're starting to see is a different strategy, how we think about computers and systems. We're starting to understand that we can control nature on truly the atomic level. And so I think we're starting to see really the nano age of being able to understand nature, being able to control nature on really a fundamental level, far better than we could do before. And then electronics is just one application of that.
A silicon computer chip serves as the foundation of the experiment. It's placed in the solution and the molecules assemble onto it. The components of Mark Reed's new computer are so small, they are almost impossible to see even with a high-powered microscope. Here's how it works. The test chip on which it will assemble has 50 tiny gold pads, each one smaller than a grain of dust. The molecules seek out the gold pads. They attach and stand upright like countless tiny individual wires. A layer of gold molecules is added on top to complete the circuit. Reed sends a current of electricity through. The device is in the on position. Another charge blocks the circuit, switching it off. This on-off sequence, corresponding to the ones and zeros at the heart of any computer calculation, has staggered the world of computer research.
It has the ability to move off the platform of silicon, being able to do this processing like you do film, where you roll it through vats and be able to put it on flexible substrates, be able to integrate the electronics in virtually anything you can think of. Now what we're talking about is being able to have computing technology that's very pervasive in our society. The applications, I think, would be just totally astounding. Any ideas that we'd come up with would probably be far too conservative.
Computers will become a property of matter, much like color is today. Right now, computers are separate from most of the things that we use and build. That is to say, we sometimes add them on afterwards, but they're not well integrated into other devices. In the future, the computers will be built in to matter. If you were to tell your grandchildren in a future era to go out and buy a computer, they would probably look at you like you were crazy, because the computer would be in everything.
This is the potential of the coming years. Computers so tiny they blend into our world. So powerful, they can change it.
The performance of computers historically has doubled about every 18 months, which means over the next 30 years we'd get about a factor of 1 million times improvement. change. It's not a numerical change, it's a quantitative change. That's a difference between crawling in a jet plane or something, right? A jet plane doesn't just get me from here to there faster. It changes geography. It changes trade, it changes commerce, it changes the world.
The U.S. Army, for one, is beginning to embrace these changes, experimenting with technology that links its soldiers' body and mind to larger computer networks. Outfitted with sophisticated displays, smart weapons, implanted chips that monitor his vital signs, and the battlefield around him. The next generation infantryman is a cyborg soldier, a techno-warrior.
This is my connector for my helmet-mounted display. This is my Mitch helmet right here. I'm gonna plug in my helmet-mounted display, tuck away my antenna and my comm cable. You see here I have a mouse that manipulates a computer. The computer screen that I see is here. It's my helmet-mounted display.
Each soldier is a part of a wireless field internet. As he moves into action, he'll know the positions of fellow soldiers and plug into a stream of real-time data. In a profession where information can mean the difference between life and death, even the gun is no longer just a gun, but a camera.
DVS on 3. 1, 2, 3.
The soldier can look around corners without exposing himself to fire. And what he sees, his comrades and leaders can see too.
I got a doorway, front doorway left, hallway clear.
For the enemies of the future, death will be digital. The impact of the cyborg revolution may be no less profound for the rest of us. Members of a lab at the University of Toronto have been pioneering the computerized lifestyle. They wear their own personalized systems, full-time. Computer, camera, optical display, all connected to the World Wide Web.
Getting back to the original reason for all of this was to have a personal imaging system and be able to modify my visual perception of reality with the eyeglasses connected to the clothing. You know, the computer in the clothing, but it's really for driving.
The most sophisticated rig is worn by the head of this unique lab, Steve Mann.
For creating signals. Well, I think the difference is that it looks normal, right? The difference here is that we've got an apparatus that looks normal.
All you can see is a pair of sunglasses, but his computer is tucked into his pocket. The frame fitted with a miniature camera. His screen is projected directly onto his retina.
Doesn't look too strange, right?
For Mann and his band of student cyborgs, the larger question is not simply one of technology, but sociology. How will all these devices change the way we live? How will they change society as we know it? Mann's group believes the answer lies in what they are able to share with each other. Using these systems, friends can be constantly in touch, able to show each other exactly what they're seeing, and tap into a common pool of visual information. For the first time, we could quite literally see the world from another person's point of view. They have a utopian hope that their inventions can foster new ways for people to connect, a new vocabulary of shared experiences, a new understanding that crosses borders and boundaries.
One of the things that I've been exploring is a small community of users of personal cybernetic technology. And what happens when you have a small number of people able to interact with one another, I think is quite different and quite interesting, because people make this world of their own. It's a very existential principle of being able to create one's own world, mastery over one's own destiny, and kind of a little bit getting back to the idea of a little bit of a self-created world.
If Steve Mann is concerned about preserving a sense of community, it's because he sees what's coming. A wave that's about to break over our society. A digital wave that will shift the flow of information onto vast wireless networks, with benefits and perils for the individual.
Pull out the card that you found on your seat. We are going to show you how to make your infrastructure bigger, how to make your infrastructure stronger.
The revolution is being sold hard.
Who has the paper now? Move forward. Let them through, copy ladies.
It's the old song and dance for a new way of doing business, a new way of living. Just how pervasive will it be? Computers, wireless communicators, they're no longer just technology, but fashion accessories. Everything from databases to diagnostic chips are being marketed as this year's hot items for the fashion forward. Soon, you too will be able to wear the internet like a shirt or a necklace. Carry around vital information on a pendant. Check out the web on your glasses. Call up information on anything or anyone you want whenever you need it. It makes perfect sense that the entrepreneur who organized this event is a former Eastern European intelligence operative.
I used to work in security and investigations, and I used to use a lot of technology for my work. That made me realize that to have information available anytime, anywhere, gives me a huge advantage over other people.
Look, within 10 to 15 years, you're going to be walking down the street, and your sunglasses or eyeglasses will have little cameras in the corner, as in Mission Impossible. They'll scan the faces of every person passing by, look up their faces on some face registry, commercial face registry, and supply captions underneath every person walking past you. Their name, 2 or 3 sentences from their self-chosen biography on their website, plus, if you so choose, dissenting opinions by their ex-spouses. And that it'll all be available. Now, what does this mean? This is certainly going to horrify some of the people who are sitting there listening to this. But stop and think. The cameras are extensions of human vision. The databases are extensions of human memory. Are you honestly going to stop them? But if we embrace this cautiously, then we'll have nothing more threatening than a return to the old village that our ancestors lived in which they knew everybody and knew everybody's reputation. Only now, instead of 1,000 people in the surrounding area, which our brains and eyes can handle, our augmented brains and eyes will be able to know the reputations of anyone we meet in a world of 10 billion fellow citizens.
There's a sense in which, in going back to a situation where people's lives are more open because of the electronic surveillance, we kind of go back to what we had in a small town, but we don't have the social inhibitions against abuse of that information. So we've come full circle, but having been stripped of civility.
Recent studies estimate that in the coming decade, our environment will be fitted with thousands of wireless devices for every human. Security cameras, microphones, traffic and environmental sensors. each with a microprocessor brain. They'll form a planetary web, billions of monitors, managing the flow of people and resources, delivering enormous quantities of data to anyone who wishes to tap in. Will this web become intelligent in its own right? And what will it mean for us as individuals? The cyborg revolution is not turning out the way we once thought. As we steadily merge with our technological inventions, the focus is not superbodies or replacement parts, the ability to survive in space. Instead, the focus is our expanding relationship with the computer, the invention of devices that enhance our senses and minds and knit us together in ways we've never imagined.
Right now, we are witnessing an event that is of an evolutionary significance that is equivalent to that when single-celled organisms joined together to form multi-celled organisms to create all of the animals and plants on the earth today. That we are aggregating into a superorganism that is glued together by all of our technology. And it can be seen most organically in the internet, which almost has a life of its own. Well, this is just the beginning. Imagine where this is going to be 100 years from now, 1,000 years from now. This is a length of time that is just an instant in terms of evolutionary time, and yet it will be enough to radically transform everything about life. And it is no surprise that the powers of this superorganism are now feeding back and are reshaping who we are and changing our very selves.
As we step out into the future, our wearables in place, our chips implanted within us, the possibilities of a cyborg life spread out before us. A great river of information will flow all around us. Will we choose to tap into this vast stream of data and shared experience? Will this new world swallow us up, stripping us of autonomy and privacy? Or will it free us in ways we can't imagine? The cyborg future is still being written. Imagine a day when machines walk among us, expressing thoughts, emotions, demanding their rights. Today, we are breathing intelligence, perhaps soon even life, into creatures of silicon and steel. A whole new breed of robots is on the rise. And the line between man and machine is starting to blur. Not far into the future, a fire sweeps through a house. A cry is heard from inside. The call goes out for help to a special kind of creature, one that walks where people fear to tread. A synthetic man, designed to probe the smoke and flames, to seek and rescue those trapped within. Not a human, a humanoid, with abilities far beyond our own. Remarkably, that future is now on the horizon. Robots and androids are no longer just figments of our imaginations. With more than 1 million of them at work around the world, we are now at a watershed moment. A moment when science fiction becomes reality, and children's dreams come true. Welcome to the age of robots. Two decades in the making, P3 from Japan's Honda Motor Company is a multi-million-dollar postcard from the future. There is no person inside. P3 stands on its own 2 feet, moves on its own power. A functioning humanoid, its descendants will enter our world to brave hazardous settings like nuclear plants, or just help around the home. The desire to build these artificial people runs deep, for it is the ultimate challenge to duplicate one of nature's greatest creations, to learn what makes us what we are. It's like looking at ourselves in a metal mirror.
The impulse to recreate ourselves is basically as old as we have written documents about humans. We find traces of that in Old Egypt, particularly in Old Greek. And so it seems to be that the wish to recreate ourselves and to understand ourselves in that process belongs to the quest of being human.
5 centuries ago, Leonardo da Vinci dissected the human body and imagined building it anew from mechanical parts. At the dawn of the machine age, we began to see the body as a machine, We believed we could recreate its intricate mechanisms with sprockets, levers, and clockwork gears. In the mid-1800s, one chess-playing machine amazed spectators around the world, until a young reporter named Edgar Allan Poe revealed that there was a person hidden inside. The 20th century opened with new fears about these automatons. Visions of artificial humans doing the bidding of mad scientists and evil capitalists. Were they mechanical masterworks or a glimpse of a future gone terribly wrong? In the real world, machines were becoming the focus of industry. In an assembly line age, they represented the ultimate worker, able to do strenuous, repetitive jobs without complaint. In fact, the term robot came from the Czech word for forced labor. The birth of the computer endowed robots with simple brains to direct mechanical arms and do precision tasks. This spawned a new dream, that machines could amount to something much more. Full-blown synthetic people.
When there's a spot of ironing, Robert can't be beat to be neat with a pleat.
Erector set humans, smart enough to do the chores.
Robert has a quiet wit.
And even offer a joke or two.
And his charm is exceeded only by his industrious manner. Robert the robot never talks back.
Rolo, answer the door.
Still, we feared what they might become. Mechanical invaders hell-bent on enslaving us.
They're mechanical, probably operated by someone we can't see.
Tin men with evil written all over them.
This ray gun ought to stop them.
By the mid-1990s, billions of dollars had been spent developing artificial intelligence, stuffing computers with facts and rules of logic, trying to make them smart like us. In some ways, they surpassed all expectations. A threshold was crossed in 1997 when an IBM chess computer named Deep Blue challenged world champion Garry Kasparov. It was a given that a computer could never defeat a grandmaster, let alone the world's best. This time, the computer surprised everyone.
Deep Blue, Kasparov, after the move C4, has resigned.
It was a landmark victory. To win, Deep Blue had analyzed over 200 million chess positions per second. Had machine intelligence finally surpassed that of humans?
Deep Blue cannot do anything but chess playing. It's not a human intelligence, because human intelligence really means to survive. I mean, we are damn good in surviving. We are really, really good, and in basically any environment. And that's what makes us special. Chess playing is not the core of human intelligence. It really is a byproduct. When you look at us as biological systems, right?
I feel confident that machine hasn't proved anything yet. It's much better machine than in Philadelphia.
One of the misconceptions that people may have is that things that we do instantaneously don't require much computation. And things we think hard, solving the problem, solving mathematical equations and so on, require a lot of computation. My proposition is actually its opposite. Things that we do very easily need a lot of computation. Why? Because it uses so much implicit, unconscious use of lots of knowledge.
In fact, programming artificial intelligence is turning out to be far more complex than we imagined. For biological creatures like us, thinking grows out of our ability to respond to the environment. Just walking down a crowded street An action that seems simple to us is incredibly tricky for a robot. Balance, perception, movement, navigation, the ability to adjust to a constantly changing landscape, all require a real-world instinct that is almost impossible to program in a robot. That's why the entire field of machine intelligence has now swung in a different direction. In numerous isolated labs around the world, researchers are adopting a revolutionary new goal: to design bodies and minds in tandem. It's called the new robotics, and it is motivated by a powerful underlying idea. Only as robots interact with people and objects, only as they respond to physical stimuli and move through the real world, can they develop real intelligence.
From all what we know about the cognitive sciences, there is no mind without a body. Our mind is body. We do not have bodies, we are bodies. So in order to think as closely to us as possible, the bodily form of the robots has to be as close as possible to us so that it has the same kind of bodily experiences.
Getting a body and brain to work together is a monumental challenge. And yet that's the goal of an ambitious effort at Japan's Honda Motor Company. Here, technicians are focusing on a key test of the new robotics: walking. This action may seem simple to us, but it's highly complex when your brain is copper wires and your limbs are gears and pulleys. Walking takes a constant reassessment and rebalancing with each stride. Of course, it helps if you can put one foot in front of the other. "20 years of work have paid off with the P3. P3 can only walk a mile an hour, and its battery wears out after 20 minutes. But its balance is superb. Its motion fluid, as it adjusts to an ever-shifting center of gravity. P3 can even negotiate stairs, a vertical obstacle course for a 250-pound creature. Its handlers keep the robot tethered, just in case. The success of the P3 has inspired a new prototype. Meet P3's cousin, the next generation walking robot. Better balanced, more nimble on its feet, and even more stylish. With sophisticated hip joints, this robot can turn as it walks and execute intricate patterns, coming ever closer to human movement. The sheer complexity of this motion was unthinkable just 5 years ago. Still, it's just the beginning. To build a humanoid that can function in our world is a challenge far beyond simple mobility. There are so many other physical attributes it might need. Skills like grasping and holding, senses like hearing and vision, and the ability to interpret what it sees. Around the world, researchers are tackling many different pieces of the puzzle. Like manual dexterity. At Waseda University, designers are working on a humanoid with a revolutionary sensitivity of touch. Delicate enough to hold an egg, strong enough to crack it. Its name is Wendy, and it's the first robot ever with such a soft touch. Each finger on Wendy's hands has yielding, compliant fingertips and a 6-axis force sensor that makes the task possible, if a little messy. Just recently, Wendy moved on to chopping cucumbers. Can sushi be far behind? At Tokyo University, another team is working on hand-eye coordination. See the ball, track it, grab it. They're experimenting with a high-speed vision chip. By connecting photodetectors directly into each pixel of the chip, it yields ultra-fast image processing. The chip can register the image and initiate a response in 1/1000th of a second, many times quicker than even the human brain. Processing speed is only one aspect of vision. Another is making sense of what we see, an activity that takes up most of our brain power. It's our 3D vision that orients us in space and allows us to move about in complex environments. But perceiving depth is not innate. It has to be learned through experience.
For us humans, vision is easy. In fact, we are probably one of the best vision machines that exists on the Earth. The world is three-dimensional, and we capture that information by the retina.
Robots today can see only in 2 dimensions.
In the case of TV cameras, we are capturing the environment onto 2-dimensional chip plane. Mathematically speaking, you projected 3-dimensional world onto 2-dimensional plane, so you lost 1 dimension. That is the depth or distance. And, well, I can give you the easiest example. When you look at the window, well, how do you know that is actually 3-dimensional world, that we are looking at the 3-dimensional scene far from this building? Well, it could be actually a picture. It could be a picture frame.
No robot is outfitted with true 3D vision. Fewer still have the brain power to understand what they see. But there is one mechanical creature that is beginning to make great strides. And it may be the first robot ever that knows how to rock. It's a humanoid called DB, short for Dynamic Brain. Years of artificial intelligence work suggest it's impossible to teach a robot everything it needs to know. But researchers like Stefan Scholl believe that the answer lies in building robots that can actually learn.
I think the key insight from our point of view is you cannot program these systems anymore. It is way too complicated. You have to find the methods, how they self-organize, how they learn autonomously, and how you bootstrap them basically from being more a little baby-like system and becoming a grown-up after a while.
For a robot to learn, it has to start with a goal. In this case, matching the rhythm of a drum beat. It hears the rhythm, then converts it to a series of computer instructions called algorithms. It then uses these instructions to guide its own arms. And if the rhythm changes, it makes an adjustment. In another test, DB tries to match the red ball's pattern of movement and to catch it with the yellow ball.
What you should see is hopefully that it gets better relatively quickly. It takes a moment, now it already knows where the target is.
As the red ball slows down, the robot must also slow its arm movement. What Scholl is working toward is a system that can reproduce complex human motion. See the action, map it, then mimic it. The next step is to adjust to changes along the way, then perhaps one day to really dance.
What we want to get ideally at some point is that the system just watches a human being and then infers what to do. For that, it has to recognize the movement intent, so what to do, what is the goal. It has to recognize how to get started.
How much can humanoids like DB learn? How far can they evolve?
A robot in the future will be able to dance. It will be able, presumably, to do vacuum cleaning, help you a little bit at home, maybe wash your car. It won't be very smart. So within my lifespan, I hope to see something which is a little bit smarter than a vacuum cleaner, but not too much. Hopefully it doesn't destroy things in my home. So that would already be a big step forward.
The current pace of increasing computer power, approximately doubling each year now, will bring us the requisite computer power to do the job of a large nervous system within 2 or 3 decades. Now, having the raw hardware power, of course, is only half the problem. The other half is having the correct organization of the internals of basically the software. We don't, of course, know how to build full human intelligence yet.
It may be that our minds and bodies are just too complicated, that computers are just too different from the brain. Biological creatures like humans not only integrate a dizzying variety of sensory information, they do it with split-second timing. Control is distributed between the brain, spinal column, nerves, and muscles in ways we don't yet understand. To put it all together, hands, eyes, legs, movement, perception, all in one package, that is a formidable task. The artistry, the sheer control of a simple dance duet. This is a level of achievement that seems nearly impossible to duplicate in machines. And yet, that's the dream of many computer scientists.
Computers should be able to do complex thought, and I don't believe it'll be 100 or 200 years. I believe it would be in this century. I don't think you build a conscious robot by setting out to do so. The way in which you do something like that would be to build one that can evolve and let it evolve the intelligence it needs in the environment in which it's going to be placed, which is the way nature does it. That's the most powerful design technique we know of. And if we can use computers and simulation to create artificial environments and run that kind of process at high speed, we can imagine designing much better things than an engineer could with a drafting board.
To promote the rapid evolution of robots, one audacious group of researchers decided to start a worldwide competition. It's called RoboCup, and it's soccer like you've never seen it before.
Go, 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 Team U!
The robots move on wheels. They see with cameras. But most important, they're fully autonomous. They are not being run by remote control. Once they're programmed, they decide how and where to move all by themselves.
It's a very tense moment there. Beautiful. Go on.
Professor Manuela Veloso from Carnegie Mellon University is one of the tournament's founders.
I think that RoboCup was tremendous in terms of pushing the limits of what we were doing much ahead. You go into these fields, our robots go there. We never saw the other robots before. We have no clue what they will be doing at the strategy level. We don't know how they move. Now we have to program our robots to cope with that uncertainty.
The RoboCup tournament was designed with an ambitious long-term goal. In 50 years, the founders hope to field teams of humanoid robots that are smart and agile enough to beat a team of human soccer players. And not just any humans, the World Cup champions. Clearly, they have a ways to go. At Carnegie Mellon, Veloso and her group are assembling their robot team for the upcoming championships.
I want perception, action, and cognition. I want them to do complex tasks. I want them to achieve goals. I want them to actually move, see, but also do something. I mean, I like the do part, because, the robots, if they are there just to see, then what do they need to know that's the door if they don't go through the door?
To win, the bots need more than speed and power. They need the ability to navigate, orient themselves, find the goal, and score. This year, Veloso and Professor Tucker Balch are devising their team's new secret weapon, a kind of mind meld. It's known as distributed data, information pooled and shared among the entire team. Even when a robot's vision sensors are masked, it can still see. It's getting the view from its teammates. This concept may well define the future of robotics. For while one robot alone may not amount to much, they are remarkably potent as a team, merging information, dividing up tasks. One mind, many bodies.
The old days of thinking that a single robot would be fully operational and fully capable, I think are gone. We realize that it's hard to have technology that, will mimic our capabilities to that level. A single computer, a single camera, a single sensor.
This year, the new world champs will be crowned in Melbourne, Australia. "20 teams from 4 different continents, fighting it out for the World Cup of Robotics, the trophy of the future." Right from the start, emotions are running high for Manuela and her colleagues. But once the whistle blows, the robots play the entire game on their own. Their designers can only stand back and cheer. Manuela's Carnegie Mellon team in blue faces off against the squad from Germany's Freiburg University.
Come on, 3, get in there. Goalie, whoops.
The Carnegie Mellon bots may be smart, but the Germans are way too quick. They win 5-0. And once the Germans start rolling, they knock off the defending champs from Iran and move into the finals. The championship round pits them against an Italian team with a cutting-edge wheel design in a match that's sure to be close. Finally, it all comes down to penalty kicks. And Freiburg is the new world champion. But to be a real winner in the larger game of robotics is going to take much more. For all the great strides these robots have taken, it's clear what they lack: passion, emotion, the will to win.
They play the last minute exactly the same way they played the middle minute or the first minute. They have no concept of, speeding up for the last minute to try to make it or whatever. So it's missing a little bit about the emotional aspect that humans have while they play a game, because they push it at the end. They push it. I mean, if they're winning, they relax more. If they are losing, they are more aggressive. All of that we don't have yet.
On the long and winding road of robotics research, scientists now believe that if tomorrow's robots are going to share our world with us, they will have to have something extra. An emotional and psychological dimension to help them communicate and respond in ways people can understand. An ability to look you in the eye and smile. At Tokyo Science University, Hiroshi Kobayashi believes that for friendly interchange between people and robots, an expressive face is a necessity. With small cameras in its eyeballs and latex skin moved by wires that contract like muscles, this robot is being built to recognize human expressions and mimic them. Most robots today are no more alive than a pile of wires. And yet when we witness their expressions and see them respond to the world, we begin to glimpse what they may one day become. At Waseda University, Atsuo Takanishi is taking human sensitivity one step further. He's creating a robotic head that can actually respond to sensory information, to light, sound, touch, even to smell. This head robot uses cameras for seeing, a microphone to hear, and sensors under its skin for tactile response. This robot can express human-like emotions with a range of expressions, from fear to surprise, anger to pleasure. It even blushes. Four computers crunch the numbers and draw upon a psychological model to generate the correct response. What are the equations of emotion? The factorials of feeling? of consciousness itself. At MIT, they're trying to find out with a pint-sized creature named Kismet.
Hello, Kismet. You gonna talk to me?
An experiment in computed behavior, Kismet is an emotion machine designed to seek out a human face and respond to the expression it finds there. Talk gently, and Kismet looks happy.
Good job, Kismet. Where'd you put your body?
Harden your tone of voice, and it frowns.
No. No. You're not to do that. No. That's not appropriate.
Kismet has 9 emotional states. It may not really be able to feel, but it can provide the right expression for the right situation. We can't help but be drawn in.
I've interacted with Kismet so often, and each time I kind of fall in love with it again. I mean, okay, I'm a nerd, so that's part of it, but it's basically this very interesting thing that Kismet is there. And that is even though it cannot yet learn, and this is fairly primitive still. But imagine that those creatures actually get more and more autonomous, learn, have development, that they will recognize you again, and all this kind of stuff. I mean, you really get emotionally involved with them.
I'm not quite sure. Oh, did he say he loves me?
So far, our attempts to get robots to respond emotionally says more about the way our brains are wired than theirs. With each passing year, machine intelligence is becoming more of a reality. And with it, the prospect that functioning humanoids will share our world. Hiroaki Kitano, a robotics designer, believes the field is advancing so rapidly, we must begin to define the future of the human-robot relationship.
Okay. Type.
Kitano is currently busy constructing a robot called SIG. He has come to believe that a robot's design is crucial. It may well be the key factor in whether we accept them in our midst.
Okay. In the future, if we start having a robotic system in a daily life, in everyday life robotics, people start afraid of robots at the beginning because people do not know what the robot is going to do. Would robot hurt you, or what happened with, and what is the relationship between a human and robot? So, design defines what the robot is and send the right message to the people what the robot is about and whether it is your friends or enemy or tools or industrial products or what.
Who knows just how far SIG and his descendants will go? What roads they will follow in the coming years? As robots begin to move among us, how will we regard them? As mere property, like automobiles? Or as individuals with rights and responsibilities of their own? Can a thing become part of human society? Can a thing become a person?
If a robot would appear on city streets today, his biggest danger would be being swarmed by lawyers wanting to take the class action case to get him his rights. And I'd bet 90 to 1 that some judge would say, he talks, he's demanding his rights, he's a person. Now, where's your green card? Where did you come from?
I think a machine can definitely be a person, because the more social our machines get, the more interactive they get, the more they learn out of interaction with us, their creators, the more we start to maintain a relationship with them, the more we interact with them. So for me, there is no question that at some point they will be persons like anyone else. They will not be human, because they are different material, but that they will be part of our community, There's no question in my mind.
It's possible that some of them will even be adopted into human families and raised as children, as human beings, to think of themselves as human beings who happen to be silicon, but still like to watch Sesame Street, still like to tell jokes, still like to go camping with the family, still have the basic values of decent people. Only I don't need a spacesuit when I go out into space because I'm made of silicon.
But when all is said and done, building sophisticated robots may be easier than accepting them into the human family. Even as they begin to blend in, we may never feel at ease with them, for they recall the fears of our most deep-seated myths. In Mary Shelley's novel, a scientist named Frankenstein breathes life into an inanimate object. The creature strikes down the creator. It must be chased and killed.
It's clear why the monster had to turn against him. He never got a name. He was never assigned personhood. Quite the opposite. Frankenstein leaves and runs away immediately. He was shunned by all people. They never took him in the community because he looked horrid. And the only guy who ever accepted him was a blind guy, and then they take him away, that's, all these stories. And so basically, the monster was never be able to become a part of human community.
Whether we learn to accept them or not, the day of the humanoid is coming soon, sooner than we think. That's because the market for them is beginning to emerge and accelerate the pace of invention. In an abandoned warehouse in Pittsburgh, a robot is being rushed to completion. A small startup company is banking on surging computer power and popular fascination to carve out a market for its product. Custom robots to serve as entertainment or museum guides. This humanoid's name is Adam, and he's about to go onto a very special stage.
Hello? Are you aware that robots do not have the right to vote? How do you feel about this unfair treatment?
A political convention where he'll promote high-tech business in his home state of Pennsylvania.
Which president served as governor of Florida?
Adam's jokes are pre-programmed. His delivery is canned. But that doesn't dissuade his human fans.
I do like robots. I want to see more use of robots. I want to see them used more around the house, in school. For myself, I'd like to see them do a lot of house cleaning.
Your first robots will be little house cleaning guys that are cute, and you can kick them out of the way and they'll go, woo, woo, woo. Yeah, you'll get robots on airplanes giving you autopilot safe landings if the pilot goes nuts. You're going to get robots in places where you're comfortable with them, in dirty, dangerous occupations deep underground. We'll get used to them that way. And they'll replace the jobs that we increasingly consider to be subhuman, that no human should have to do.
How many U.S. presidents were either shot or...
When they start holding conversations with you, it will be a little unnerving, but that's just going to be the next step.
In Japan, designers believe there will be a market for household robots. As a significant proportion of the population enters old age in the next decade, they'll need extra help around the house, fetching things and cleaning up. Eventually, as the idea spreads from there, every home could have its own robot. Every human his or her own humanoid. Remarkably enough, they're about to go on sale right now. For the first time, a company is unveiling a robot you yourself can own. After years of secrecy, Honda will introduce the first ever humanoid robot for the general market. It is a masterpiece of engineering and math, built of wires and motors and algorithmic equations. And it's undeniably cute. The little robot has the balancing and walking technologies of the famed P3 and more. At only 3.5 feet tall, it's small enough to be picked up if it falls. It's designed to be useful around the house, to stand eye to eye with a person in a wheelchair, or to see across a low Japanese table. Eventually, the company hopes to make humanoids that can travel and work anywhere you can. A whole line of take-home robots.
I believe robots can be very useful to people in houses and in streets, and hopefully in many other places. So everywhere.
Robots that evolve from, let's say, household robots, I think those will be very human-like in that they will understand human psychology in order to better interact with human beings, and they will behave in ways that human beings can recognize. And in fact, the market pressures will continually select robots that are more human-like. So we will have human-like robots, we'll have inhuman-like reasoning machines, we will have robots in the bowels of factories that are utterly different, robot spacecraft that have completely different concerns. What we'll have is an ecology of robots that's probably broader than the ecology of living things.
We are just beginning to shape a tomorrow in which robots will walk and work among us. Useful robots entering the marketplace. They'll be messengers, miniature spies, all sorts of robots, no longer oddities, but everyday workers. They'll wash the windows, help out on the street, even take care of children. There's no telling what remarkable forms they'll take, how many different ways they'll help us.
I think we have a really good chance of constructing a comfortable retirement for ourselves by really working hard at defining what the robot should do and what they should not do, and making sure that they follow those rules, even as they become smarter and smarter. In fact, crafting these laws, I think, will be the last really serious activity of biological humanity. Undoubtedly, we'll do it with the help of other intelligent machines.
Of course, not everyone buys this rosy picture. As robots become more autonomous, they may separate from humankind and reproduce on their own. They might not want us around anymore. We might become expendable.
Similarly, if we create a robot species, let it do what it wants, it's like handing over the keys to the future to what happens to happen with the evolution of that robot species. I don't think that's something we should do lightly. And once the robots are in the wild, can evolve on their own, and can reproduce and speciate, and that problem is that if they're smarter than us, stronger than us, evolve quicker than us, they're likely to out-evolve us in the same way that we've taken over the planet and out-evolved most of the other creatures and certainly all the other primates.
There's certainly a finite chance that the whole process will go wrong and the robots will eat us. And perhaps the thing that's strangest then about my view of this is that I'm not too bothered by that possibility. because the robots will survive, and the robots are our offspring. And in the long run, that's the way it's going to be anyway.
We'll face that question this century. We can argue about whether it's 2030, 2050, 2080. The technology is progressing quickly enough, and we may face it just in a bumbling way, and just something will happen. Not all scenarios lead to disaster, but there certainly are. If you want the continuation of the biological species human, there are some scenarios that are distressing, and to go forward without thinking about it or planning will bring some of those scenarios into play.
I'm not worried about robots will control us. Robots may and probably will surpass us in terms of our capability. So what? We are the creators. We will be making them serve us.
The descendants of today's humanoid experiments might be our downfall. Then again, they could fulfill our greatest dreams. Just as children outgrow their parents, so too, we may decide to let this next form of evolution go its own way, carrying with it the legacy of our civilization out across the stars.
We've always had a dream of going to the next place. For the last 50 years, that has included the stars in our science fiction, Star Trek, and all of that. And yet the stars are so far away that unless there's some fluke of physics that lets us develop warp drive, the spaceships will take hundreds of years to get to the next star. Now, that's quick as far as the stars are concerned. But as far as we're concerned, we would need suspended animation, we'd need sleep, or colony ships, or go as machines. If we've raised machines to think of themselves as humans, if we've adopted them into our families to have our values, then if we send a machine, it arrives there and radios back to us, "Hi, guys, I'm here. A human has arrived." Well, that may not be quite as satisfying right now for you to envision as Star Trek, but it's the same thing. We will go.
We are beginning to imagine a day when biology and technology become one. A day when our technology advances so far we decide to abandon our bodies and transfer our minds into mechanical beings. These far-reaching ideas are symbols of where we're heading. For as humans become more mechanical and robots more human, we are erasing the line between man and machine. And, some would say, giving birth to the future.